What does it really mean to be successful today? Well, we're going to dive into a conversation between a father and his son, Evan, that starts with that exact question. And what it uncovers is this deep conflict between our modern desires and, our inner peace. So let's break it down.
So it all kicks off with this. The father's looking back at his own youth, and he realizes, man, his son's world is just fundamentally different. So he asks this really simple question, just trying to get a handle on what drives the new generation. And the answer he gets? Whoa, it changes the whole conversation.
Evan's answer is just immediate, almost automatic. He says today's goals are popularity, power, and pleasure. These three words, they're not just words, they are the absolute core of the modern dilemma we're going to explore today. They set the stage for everything that follows.
Okay, so what do those three things actually mean? Because this isn't just a simple list. This is an entire philosophy, a whole worldview on what it means to live a good, successful life in the world today.
So check out how Evan actually defines these goals. Popularity, that's about friends, girlfriends, and being famous. Power, that's about having the wealth to buy whatever you want, and the knowledge to ace your tests. And pleasure, well, that's just fulfilling your human desires, which are always changing and always getting bigger. Notice the theme here? There's no finish line. There's no ceiling. It's a relentless, never-ending chase.
For Evan, there's one thing that connects all of this together: freedom. He truly believes that freedom is the key that unlocks all of it: the popularity, the power, the pleasure. It's basically the engine driving his entire worldview. And the logic is simple, right? The more stuff you want, the more freedom you're going to need to get it.
And this, right here, is where you really see the break from the old ways of thinking. When his dad asks him about things like true love or, happily ever after, Evan's response is just so clinical. He literally sees relationships as temporary electrochemical responses. Lasting happiness? He thinks that's chemically impossible unless you have a constant supply of drugs. It's a deeply cynical viewpoint, but you gotta admit, maybe a brutally honest one too?
So, if those are the goals, how in the world do you achieve them? Well, that brings us to the next big piece of their conversation, the digital shortcut. For Evan's generation, technology feels like the perfect tool for the job. But his dad starts to wonder, is it a solution or is it just a cheat code?
Evan basically explains that technology makes this whole chase feel, cleaner, a lot less messy. You can have hundreds of friends that you've never actually met in person. You can build a perfect, curated digital identity. You can even have a fantasy friendship with an AI. It's all about getting the feeling of connection and status without any of the mess or risk of the real world.
But his father sees it totally differently, and he just cuts right to the heart of it with two words: that's cheating. Man, that is a powerful accusation. He's not just questioning the method here. He's suggesting that it lets you completely skip a fundamental part of being human, which is learning how to deal with other messy, complicated people.
And Evan's defense is so telling. He pretty much says, yeah, that's the whole point. The goal is to avoid the messiness. The digital world gives him control. It's a safe space where he can curate all of his interactions and totally avoid people who are, in his own words, unpredictable and offensive. It's really a defense mechanism that's been dressed up as a lifestyle upgrade.
And so his father asks the exact same question again, but with one tiny, crucial change. It's not just about relating to people anymore. Now it's about relating to the real world itself. And that question just hangs there in the air, challenging the entire foundation of Evan's digital-first life. And he has no answer.
In that silence, that's the pivot. This is where the whole conversation shifts. It moves away from chasing external goals out there in the world and turns inward, to understanding what's going on inside our own minds. The real question now becomes, what even is a problem?
It all starts with this incredibly relatable feeling from Evan. I mean, who hasn't felt this? I wish all my problems would go away. That simple, profound desire to live a life without struggle. That wish becomes the doorway for his father's most radical idea.
And here is that radical idea. A problem isn't the thing that happens to you, it's your internal reaction to it. It's our own perceptions, our own expectations and attachments that turn a totally neutral event into a negative experience. I mean, think about that. That simple reframe changes everything. It puts the power completely back in our hands.
Now, it's really important to be clear about what this doesn't mean. This isn't about just being ignorant or apathetic. As you can see here, not knowing about a problem just hides it, and not caring just ignores it.
And as the father points out, both of those approaches just end up making things worse. This is about active perception, not passive avoidance.
And this idea challenges a belief that so many of us have. We're taught to think that a successful life is a problem-free life. But what if that's a completely flawed goal? What if real success is actually about how we handle the inevitable curveballs life throws at us?
So if our perception is the real issue, then what's messing with our perception in the first place? Well, to explain this, the Father introduces this really powerful metaphor for what's at the root of our inner turmoil. He calls it the beast in the cave.
So here's the diagnosis. The Father argues that the seed of most of our internal problems is non-forgiveness. And that's not just about forgiving other people, it's also about forgiving ourselves. He says this one single root sprouts into all kinds of toxic stuff. Resentment, wanting revenge, retaliation, you get the picture.
And this is the first part of the metaphor. These unresolved feelings, this lack of forgiveness, they don't just sit there quietly. No, they create a constant low-level static, a kind of hum of disharmony that becomes the background noise of your life. And we get so used to it, we might not even notice it's there.
And because that background hum is always on, it makes us incredibly vulnerable. Some small everyday thing happens, a comment from a friend, a bad grade, and suddenly it's like a jet engine is flying right over your head, amplifying that negative feeling and just drowning out everything else. This is why we sometimes overreact, you know? The trigger isn't the whole story.
And this right here is the full picture. The source of that hum is the beast of non-forgiveness, and it lives in a cave inside of us. It roars out during those spikes, creates a ton of chaos, and then it retreats. But here's the key. Just because the intense emotion goes away, that doesn't mean the problem is solved. The beast is still there, just back in the cave, waiting.
So how do you deal with the beast? How do you finally quiet that hum? Well, the conversation ends on a really hopeful, actionable note. The Father lays out a path forward, a framework for gaining true inner control and real freedom.
He calls this whole process soul school, and it's got 4 steps. First, you have to yearn for something more meaningful than just pleasure and power. That yearning leads you to discern, to tell what's real from what's fake. Then you learn through practice, through failure, and through study. And finally, you earn it, a true inner peace that no one can ever take away from you. It's a path away from external goals and toward internal mastery.
And this brings us all the way back to the beginning, back to Evan's original quest for freedom. The modern path of popularity, power, and pleasure, it promises freedom, but as we've seen, it can easily become its own kind of cage. The Father's path, the soul school, suggests that real freedom isn't about getting what you want on the outside. It's about mastering what's on the inside. So the final question is really for all of us to think about. Are the goals we're chasing creating real freedom, or are they just building a cage?